Well, welcome back to computer science. What did I do yesterday? I did a full session. Was it all just programming projects and reviewing my grade? My my quiz 4 grade? I don't feel like we just started lecture 28, but I took no notes. It was on files continued. What? Yes, I did. Before I looked. It would have been right at the end of buffer, so you can turn buffering on and off as a third argument when you open up a file. And so it goes typically file address, location of file, then the mode, and then the buffering. So buffering equals, you can say 0 to turn buffering off, 1 to keep it as line buffering default, and then anything above 1, buffering equals 10, will mean it flushes every 10 bytes. So then, yeah, flushing. So flushing, when it hits that byte limit or the line, if it's default, it will flush out of the output buffer. You can also force flush by using flush method. Some operating systems, you also have to do os.fsync in order to force flush. And also when you close a file, it force flushes the output buffer. Is that everything? Okay, file.flush, os.fsync. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's yesterday. Now I'm going to jump in and start working through lecture 28, which is the final lecture of this semester. Files continued. Let's talk to you in a bit. All right, we are extremely close to being done with all the lecture work now for Computer Science 1. Literally like 3 paragraphs left. I started and finished the first unit in the last lecture and started the second unit, which is the final unit of the semester. The first unit was on the with statement. So what is the with statement? So with statement basically is the statement in which you can use with open when you're opening a file. And it really goes in the form of with, then the open statement, or open function, as, and then basically the file name you'd like, colon, and then you've got a code block. And so what with does is basically it will automatically close the file once that code block is done. And why is that important? Well, forgetting to close files can actually cause problems, such as if you open a file in write mode, that file can actually never be used, opened and written to by another program until it's closed. So you don't want to forget to close files. And so the with statement is recommended to use when you're opening a file because it automatically opens and closes the file. And so you don't forget to close it. And yeah, that's essentially the big picture. Now, basically, when you use the open function with the with statement, you're going to it creates a context manager. I don't know if that's an object or what, but it kind of was like, it's kind of out of scope, but it kind of mentioned context manager. Context manager basically manages a resource by automatically like creating and closing it or shutting it down. In this case, it's a file. So yeah, I think that's basically that idea of the with statement. And then the second unit is on what? CSV files, I think. So CSV file, instead of a text file, CSV file. What is CSV file? Comma separated values. Essentially, it's a spreadsheet without explicit columns and rows. It's data that's stored separated by commas, and it's text-based. And each line is a row, and each of the data items is known as a field. And fields in the same position in a row are are in a column. So it's basically like a spreadsheet without the explicit rows and columns to structure it and make it more visually pleasing. So to read and basically work with CSV files, you gotta import CSV, which is CSV is a module in the Python standard library. And in order to write, is it write to or read to? One of them. In order to read and write to a CSV file, you've got to use. No. In order to read to a CSV file, I believe, or read a CSV file, you have to create a reader object. The way you create a reader object is csv.reader, and then within the argument, the file name. And this will create an iterable object. The reader object is iterable, and when you iterate through a reader object, it will return a list of strings for each row, and each element in the list is a field. All right, I think that's basically everything. Here we go. The with statement. With statement can be used with open to open, execute statements, and then automatically close the file. Creates a context manager, which context managers manage use of a resource by performing setup and tear down operations. Pretty close. With open as file name, code block. Not closing files can cause problems later. Example, a file that was opened in write mode can't be written to by another program until closed. Best practice is to open files with statement so you don't forget to close the file. That was a pretty good run. Now, comma separated values files, CSV files. Text-based file that store data separated by commas, good. The data items are known as fields, good. Essentially a spreadsheet without explicit columns and rows, good. CSV module in the Python standard library, good. Used to help read and write files in CSV format, good. To read a file using the CSV module, you must first create a reader object, great. Reader object, csv.reader, and then as an argument, file name, great. Iterable, returns a list of strings for each row when iterated over, good. All right, that was very solid. Like I said, we have about a half of a unit of a lecture left until we finished at least the mandatory lectures. There's one extra optional lecture, which is Python for data science, which, hey, I got an extra 2 weeks, and we're finishing the last material now, so might as well do the optional one, I guess. But that's gonna do it. Wrap it up for now. Talk to you later today. See ya.